everyone. Welcome to The Download, where we bring you discussion, analysis from a Catholic perspective. Today is Wednesday, December 6th, 2023. I'm Bradley Eli, here with my two co-hosts, Rodney Pelletier and Kyle Copey. The FBI is continuing to face scrutiny from lawmakers and from the public over the notorious Memo singling out radical traditionalist Catholics. On Tuesday, some Republicans on the Senate Judiciary Committee grilled FBI Director Christopher Wray over the now infamous memo, which was leaked to the public earlier this year. The memo mentions Church Militant by name. And yeah, by name, it wasn't in a long list, like in a footnote at the end of like nine or 10 other ones. It was, I think it was like on page 4, prominently, given our own paragraph, talking about Church Militant by name. I was thinking, wow. I texted my sisters about that and said, yeah, the Church Militant has been mentioned in an FBI memo, and they were like, like, well, I'll visit you in jail someday. But as until now, I don't know you. So
they were what was that hate watch list? I think they referred to us as being connected
Southern
with
Poverty Law. Yeah. That was their source.
Yeah.
And everybody's like, oh no, you didn't use that as a source, really. The discredited Southern Poverty Law.
That was their main source for the gathering of all these organizations. And we all know that Southern Poverty Law Center is such a trustworthy and reputable and very
completely unbiased.
Completely unbiased.
I mean, Wikipedia looks pretty good compared to that.
Exactly. Totally not fascist at all.
Yeah, they have a tendency to just go ahead and have a theme, ACLU and kind of a secular humanist view of things, where they will. Of course, we're not going to come off very well if you're speaking about any type of, if you're in the culture wars whatsoever.
A bunch of other really good lay organizations are on there, so I don't know. I guess we'd be in good company then.
I guess one of the things we were just chumming it up at the beginning, before the show, and I can't totally, what Ray was called out for here was, you mentioned Richmond. Well, they're saying, well, this actually was quite a bit broader than Richmond. There's also
this is the FBI report.
The FBI report was blotting out Portland and L.A. offices. Now, Ray kind of walked that back a little bit and said, yeah, they were involved, but kind of more of an ancillary, tertiary way. And so he still stands by the fact that it was mainly Richmond office that was producing this. But still, those offices were mentioned in the memo, and it was a broader thing, enough to get the Judiciary Committee stirred up again and said, hey, what are you guys doing? This is a little bit broader than you originally claimed.
Well, the Judiciary Committee back a few months ago actually wanted Ray to amend his original testimony to say that, look, he made it look like there was just one office involved. And then Ray comes back and he's trying to play word games in order to defend either his own ignorance or his own malice. We don't know which one it was. It's one of those two. Either he lied about it or he's playing word games to cover up the fact that there was something going on here, or he didn't know, which is way worse. As the director of the FBI, you apparently don't know that this is going on in multiple FBI field offices. So yeah, you're right. It was Los Angeles, Portland, obviously Richmond was the original, but Milwaukee was also implicated in this as well, and that's just as far as we know. That's just from what we know from the unredacted portion that we've now seen just recently. So yeah, I mean, this whole thing of trying to sell us that it was just the Richmond office because they produced the document. Yeah, okay, the document came out of the Richmond office and then was put out towards the entire FBI as sort of like here's the thing we need to do for our protocol going forward. Here's how you're to investigate these type of people. Yeah, it came out of the Richmond office, but it had input from all these other offices, a few that we know of. We don't know how many more that were implicated in that. So, I mean, it's really disingenuous to say that and try to lead us to believe that, oh, it was just one isolated incident, one office, one parish, one guy, one interview, one.
And that's what Ray is still sticking to. He's still trying to sell that point. And I guess here's a little bit of a shocker. You might think, there are kooks, amongst all walks of life. There are. And we know personally one particular kook who actually was making threats that could be deemed as dangerous or whatnot, and that it's even being pursued and investigated. So you can't say that just because they're looking at some Catholics out there that necessarily that's always going to be, there can be never a Catholic that ever did anything wrong. Well, that's totally not. I mean, Pius V, every evil in the world is due to a lukewarm Catholic. So he kind of puts them all on the hook right there. And all of us have lukewarmness to some degree. So the thing is, you can't just say because they're looking at a Catholic or because they're looking at soccer moms. I mean, not recently, about a year and a half ago or so, that another whole memo came out and talking about, at these board meetings, school board meetings, and looking at domestic terrorists. Well, this is the line, this is the dots that I would be connecting, is school board moms, who are upset that, whatever sex education graphic stuff is being, or just crazy, your kid is racist because he's white. I'm sorry, he has to accept that. Well, no, he doesn't. You shouldn't be telling him that. Connecting the dots of why is the view so strong on, I've never seen it this strong before. Maybe it was, but we just didn't know it, that on domestic terrorists, when every day there is more reports about military-age men coming across the border, Chinese, Islamic terrorists, unvetted gang members and all that. I mixed it with good people as well, but a lot of them being of military age and just pouring hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of them into this country and just being put all over the country as if, oh, well, they'll never do anything wrong.
Right.
But what happens when a whole bunch of Islamic people say, hey, I don't want your take on the stance of Israel? And I'm not here to weigh in on the right and the wrong and how it should be good or not, but what happens then when you have that type of thing? Or if we go into a hot war with China and all these people are military, what are you doing here? Why are all these men lined up? There's video of that from there. Are you going to put everybody that's Oriental into a camp or something? Well, of course not. But it's an odd thing that you're just having so many people flow in at a time when you're really looking at soccer moms and Catholics and that type of thing. So no, where Catholics are certainly not beyond investigating, but at the same time, if you're looking pretty hard at them to put a whole memo out to say we want to embed our men in Catholic churches and find out, what's going on, who the people are there. Yeah, I don't know.
And it's definitely proof that there's something bigger afoot here than just we have, law enforcement. So much of it has been compromised. I've know police officers who told me 10 years ago they started skimping on the training. And you have, officers who are not the same caliber as the ones before that. And
especially since all the layoffs after Floyd and that.
Especially how, cops
all your
in New
top
York.
brass.
Something like I saw a statistic or an article just last week. 2,500 cops are in New York City alone are retiring early.
That's just one report. That's been going on and on and on
multiple
for
cities.
Years.
So you have law enforcement that's been compromised to various degrees. You have the border that's been compromised. We have an executive branch of the government that is allowing that to happen. You have Joe Biden that's put in close to 200 judges now, and his judges are all the caliber of, Justice Ketanji Jackson Brown, who doesn't know what a woman is.
Brown Jackson, but
even though she's most likely a woman, I don't know if by her standards she would be, but she says, I'm not a biologist. Well then, but you're on the Supreme Court. You're not going to make those decisions, but this is by design. So we have open borders on design. We have crooked judges by design. So this is just...
Well, you get into the attorney generals, too, who are all bought and paid for by George Soros. We wrote and reported on that, where the Soros funding these AGs in the hotspots, it just happened to be where all the riots went on. And those people who were throwing the stones and actually did a lot of mayhem are being allowed back on the street very quickly.
You have people who commit horrific crimes, murderers, who are let right back on the streets. And look at the news. Every big city has an epidemic of crime. Really
spiking.
And it's epidemic. They have to, stores are being looted, this whole thing, and there's a whole sub thing that, isn't even mentioned on the media either, but there's an epidemic of crime and violence and disorder. Wasn't it just a couple weeks ago that the president of China came to San Francisco? San Francisco is a notorious notoriously filthy, crime-ridden cities, people, getting stoned on the streets, and they're looting stores. But what did they do when Xi Jinping came? They cleaned up everything, cops everywhere. And what did people conclude from that? The government can do something about crime if they want to, but they don't because they hate us.
Yeah.
We had Gavin Newsom basically admitting, when asked about, well, why are you just choosing now to clean up the streets? He's like, well, yeah, we're just doing it to make it look good for now. I mean, he basically admitted that.
How about you keep doing it?
Exactly.
Keep them out there.
It's only when it's advantageous politically for the left. And, you talk about the crime in the major cities. Lo and behold, who runs the major cities? Most of them, where you see all this crime and violence, it is Democrats. So that's the people that are really behind all this
Show me a city that's not run by Democrats. They got the city, dude.
They got the cities.
GOP has the country, but you just need the cities.
Right, and then Brad, too, you talk about the the military-age males that are just flooding across the border by the thousands, unvetted, undocumented. No one knows where they're going, what they're doing. Sometimes they're even aided by organizations, Catholic organizations sometimes, and even organizations that are involved with the U.S. government, oddly enough. But the FBI is talking about domestic terrorists. Well, now you have a bunch of people that you don't know who they are, you don't know where they came from, that are now on your soil. So that's what you should really be concerned about. Those people are on domestic territory now, and if and when an outbreak, a war, or whatever, with whatever country starts, I mean, who knows? There's sleeper cells and things like that that are going to get tapped and called and say, okay, go into action now. You're already in the country, or you're going to be recruited for something if you didn't come here to infiltrate in the first place. And
it's not just the sleeper cells, which is an excellent term, because that's can be so prevalent that right now, but the fact that the fentanyl can come across, the tearing apart and weapons and all sorts of dirty bombs and all this type of stuff, because all the agents they themselves are saying we're leaving so much of the border unprotected. And this isn't about the border per se, but we're talking about the moral fabric of this country. And you'd have to back up for a minute and say, well, why would anybody want to tear apart the moral fabric of the country? And why would they not like America? Well, my goodness, if you don't realize how anti-American the rhetoric has been in the classroom for many, many years and is ramping up today, we're not God bless America. We're not in for patriotism, even though that would be a virtue, technically speaking, in the Catholic ideal. And the whole founding fathers, they owned slaves, they did this, they did that, this horrible. So why is the moral fabric under attack in this country? Is it a power grab? First of all, do you got morals if you're actually killing 3,000 babies a day, the party of death, the Democrats, to stay in power? If you are, then any of this other stuff is small potatoes compared to that ongoing march since Roe v. Wade. Now you say, Roe v. Wade got overturned, and the next thing was all the referendums, which to me is more heartbreaking because that's harder to address. That's grassroots level. But if you're already in the tank, morally speaking there, do you care about the moral fabric of this country, or are you just going to keep going into it deeper?
Yeah.
And I think the moral fabric in this country, if there is any moral fabric left to speak
Fabric's wearing out.
Yeah, it's
threadbare.
You need to go to Joanne Fabrics to get some little things to patch up there, I guess. But the people who are doing that patchwork and who are upholding what's left of the moral fabric and trying to rebuild that culture, I think, are what we would consider the traditional Catholics, right? The ones who attend reverent liturgies, whether it be the Latin Mass or wherever they can find a reverent liturgy. The ones who are trying to live the traditional morality of the church, who are trying to have large families and homeschool them and raise them in the faith to the best of the abilities. These are the type of people that are rebuilding the culture, but unfortunately it looks like they're also being targeted by the FBI. And now, I hate to say it, but to the FBI's credit, and I know no one's going to make the distinction here, but to the FBI's credit, if you actually read the original memo, I don't know who they consulted wanted to put this in there. But how they define radical traditionalist Catholic is distinct from how they defined merely traditional Catholic. And this, you have to like find this in the footnote of the document, but I encourage people to go out and read this. I mean, the media is going to gloss over it. They're going to lump all Catholics into the same thing. Well, if you're pro-life, if you lean anywhere towards the right or conservative, or you like the TLM or whatever, you're going to be considered an RTC. But the FBI memo distinctly says, so we can hold their own words against them here. This is not all people who are just simply pro-life or like the traditional Latin Mass. They're talking about people, how they define RTCs, are people that reject Vatican II, who are highly critical and may even reject Pope Francis and even John Paul II, and who go towards these sort of anti-Semitic groups, talking about violence. I mean, the FBI did use this operation to actually arrest at least one person that we know of, who I believe was involved in the SSPX. I'm not saying all SSPX people are radical like this, but this person happened to gravitate towards the SSPX, and they found Molotov cocktails and other weaponry, and he had talked about violence specifically against Jews and things like that, and they did end up arresting him. So these things, as much as we don't like them, we don't like the infiltration, we don't like being seen as this monolith of, all faithful Catholics are somehow these radicals, something like that. These things end up sometimes, having results in terms of their investigations that do arrest people that seemingly look like they're going to commit acts of violence.
Yeah, and you probably don't get those type of people coming out of, Our Lady of Suburbia Parish, faith community. It says faith community on their billboard and all this. You're probably not going to get that type of activism out of that cross-section of people, whereas, was it in the RTC, FBI's thing, you might be more likely to find that. And so, I don't know, that's maybe sort of an objective criteria there, but it's still hurtful nonetheless. I mean, the FBI has been, like you said earlier, they've been infiltrating mosques forever, and we're like, yeah, go ahead, do it, find the terrorists and arrest them. Now, you could also say that they've been engineering, things for a long time too, radicalizing people, and I think there's been evidence of that in the last few days. So, like I said, our systems here in the U.S. have been compromised. I don't know if you can vote that out. I don't think so. No. So.
Well, the only way you can is, and I guess this is where we try to bring some solutions. And I think that's a very good point at this point in time, looking at the 2020 election, 2022 election, where a lot of the polls, just trying to be objective here, a lot of the polls were saying, it's going to go this way. Whew, I guess the polls were completely wrong. And how can that be? Well, if you can't trust any of the polls, and you can't trust, common sense in some areas, if you can't trust the ballot box, if you can't trust, and maybe some of the, just looking at the referendums in this country and who passes them, you got a lot of people just in the tank for abortion. You can see that in these different state referendums.
What state that has had a referendum on abortion so far hasn't passed it? I don't know.
And our country, because so many young people vote and we don't follow, this is a huge problem right now in this country. They don't follow truth, they follow passion. So you can be singing the most passionate tune on anything, and it can even be nonsensical, and people will be right there with you. And no one wants to sit back, because I guess the truth is boring, you might say. I always said that if Hillary Clinton, if they showed one clip on YouTube of Hillary Clinton stomping on a little litter of puppies, she would never, ever get elected again. All they have to do is just keep looping that, and there would not be a single person who would ever vote for her. You can say, well, she's in the tank for nonstop abortion, even a partial birth from for no reason whatsoever. You can say that she wants to remanufacture the moral, what was that phrase in 2015? The morals
Basket of deplorables, or
that was one thing, but
there was
the morals and ethics of this country have to change.
Need to change.
And she can just be the most, social engineering, all of that out, and you're like, fine, and I'll take away all your jobs and ship them overseas, and you guys all have nothing and eat bugs and work for. And none of these truths are being presented out there but you got to have the passion, and we're in such this media age that you can just show passion, little glips here and there, and they actually have short-circuited the whole reasoning process. Right. So people aren't following truth and reason. They're not really using that part. It's emotion. This romanticism period, followed the Enlightenment period of just hardcore reason. Now we're just in this romanticism where you just follow your heart. And it used to be blind faith in Luther's era, and 250 years later it was just blind just reason alone, and now it's just emotion alone, and that's the only thing we got left, and that's where we're at right now. And that's really being milked a lot. It's hard to fight that.
Well, a thing we hear is what is my truth? My truth is XYZ. And so if emotion is truth, and everybody knows emotions change, then that's why there's a my truth. What's your truth? And
we're both okay with it,
right? But are they're completely contradictory things? It's the part of the chaos and the lie that we live in nowadays.
So that gets back to the family and trying to instill a sense of no, there is. You don't just follow your heart.
Right.
You actually try to get to the bottom of things, learn the truth of things, and actually apply that in your life.
Yeah.
So you talk about this lack of reason, this lack of critical thinking, and for me, it really gets back to what I call like the soundbite culture too, because we talk about how emotions are leading the general public nowadays. Well, I think soundbites are too, to some degree. I mean, soundbites can be helpful if you're just trying to get a little bit of factoid here, but a lot of times you need the context of what you're talking about to really tell people, okay, here's how you get all your facts straight with this particular story or whatever. And two, people don't want to sit there and listen to a debate. They don't want to sit there and read a long article or read multiple articles on something to get their facts straight. They just want to be told, a quick answer that's probably going to be skewed in one way or the other. I guess a soundbite is more of a 90s thing, but I guess in today's language, it would be more of like a TikTok generation thing, because those are a minute long or something like that.
All the kids are into
all
nowadays.
The kids are in TikTok and YouTube shorts. And I'm not saying don't go watch the Church Militant YouTube shorts, because they are very good. So still watch those, because we'll provide you some actual good content. I mean, the media is always a double-edged sword, right?
What you said about sound bites, we'll put down as a sound bite.
Please make this into a sound bite. Whoever's in charge of that, please do that.
We'll just call that a hot take nowadays. So, but in the family, trying to get the principles out there, and the thing is, trying to get reading, writing, arithmetic back into the and I don't know if schools will do this very well. I mean, it's a lot of even in my era, in my time, I guess it was the early 80s, in English, we had gotten, in the late 70s, gotten away from diagramming sentences. What are you actually saying? What are you meaning by all of this? What's your subject and your nouns and your predicates? We got away from all that. We got away from grammar. We got away from communication, and it really was into creative writing and just literature. It was the best of times and the worst of times, and it really was just the worst of times. And there is no critical. I mean, I just saw a soundbite on social media. And it said we went, in a very short time in this country, we went from teaching Greek and Latin in high school, to teaching remedial English in college. And if that's not the truth, so just if you don't even have the language down, the language is not only communicating, but that's also how you process, how you think in a language. And if you don't have a language and understanding of that working to actually process things, that's going to be a problem. And I tell you, I learned more English studying Latin 1 year than I did in 4 years of studying English.
That's funny.
You have to know everything what you're saying. And it starts there. And then when they're talking about math in the Greeks, 500 years before Christ, they would teach you math before they taught you philosophy. You have to have A equals B and B equals C, therefore A equals follow your heart, whatever it is. I don't care. Well, no, it's C. A equals C. That's my truth, yeah? And so this whole thing had to be very structured. If you're not thinking in a linear reasoning way, you're not thinking.
Yeah.
So,
and when we talk about the downfall of education a lot here at Church Militant. I am involved in some of those programs, so you can go check those out if you can find me on there. But yeah, it really comes back to a lack of critical thinking, and the solution at this point is really just to start all over. I mean, a lot of our Catholic schools are unfortunately lost, so it's like if you're considering sending your kid to a Catholic school now, it's like, no, don't do it. If you can afford it, go into the homeschooling thing, and even teaching.
Or some people on set here would have argued the other way, that you have to do that. But
that has happened in the past here, I'll admit that. But even for adult remedial education, because a lot of us weren't raised in any sort of classical school or mindset, or we weren't even very well catechized growing up, we've had to do a lot on our own in terms of lay work of teaching ourselves the faith, or finding good teachers out there, whether they be online here at Church Militant. We have a lot of resources for that, or a good priest somewhere to actually teach you the faith. And it's just a lot of remediation that has to get inculcated in the culture to help rebuild the culture.
Yeah, even with the Catholic faith you're talking about there, a lot of this has to do with, get to know Jesus. Okay, well that's cool, but you also have to know about him. What did he do? Who is he? It was all this about the unitive way, Well, you haven't even gone through the purgative or illuminative yet. You haven't even got a basis in understanding of, that he is the Son. When Jesus said, who do men say that I am? Well, that's all over the map. But who do you say that I am? Well, you're the Christ, the Son of God. And we have to get back to some of that informational transference. And if we're not there, we don't have the building blocks to kind of build on. If you're the Son of God and you came to free me from sin, but if I don't choose that, then I'm not availing myself of the graces that you made available to me, then how is that my life is going to be different, if we're just checking in down here and everybody gets to heaven? So there's a lot of things in that area too that have to be done in a critical reasoning way, informational based way, and we're really lacking in all these areas. So thank you so much for joining us for today's episode of The Download. Now please join us as we finish in prayer, begging Our Lady's intercession for our nation and our church. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Salve Regina, Mater Misericordiae, vita dulcedo, spes nostra salve. A te clamamus exules Filii Hevae, a te suspiramus gementes et flentes, in hac lacrimarum vale. Ea ergo advocata nostra, illos tuos misericordes oculos ad nos converte, et Iesum benedictum fructum ventris tui, nobis post hoc exilium ostende, o clemens, o pia, o dulcis Virgo Maria. Amen. In the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Thank you again for joining us for the download. As a special thanks to our supporters who make videos like this possible. From all of us here at Church Militant, God bless you.